Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. Before we dive into this powerful episode, please remember to subscribe to our channels and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes to continue hustling. This episode is sponsored by Align Life, Brain-Based Health Solutions, Chiro HD, Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, German College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, Life Chiropractic College West, Pro Hockey Chiros, Pro Baseball Chiros, the IFCO, and 100% Chiropractic. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 568 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your producer, Luke Millette, and here's your host, James Chester.
So today we have the opportunity of interviewing Dr. Haig John, and on this episode we talk about families first and the revolution of health of the future. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is another episode of the Chiro Hustle podcast. Today I have Haig John coming in from Melbourne, Florida. It's episode 568, and we're going to talk about some really great things, families, medical freedom, things that really resonate with me, and protecting the sacred trust, innate intelligence, universal intelligence, the big idea, things that people that if you don't know what these things are, the sacred trust, go research it, find out what the sacred trust is. It's BJ Palmer's last words. But we do protect freedom of speech with this show. I think it's very important that people know that. We also stand up for medical freedom and family health freedom. They're not the same things, but you should be highly curious of what that means to you and your family. And I know we're going to talk about some of those topics today. And, you know, firm belief, trust God, do your research. That was my takeaway from our green room conversation today is trust God, do your research.
That's it.
And, Dr. Haig John, this is an amazing opportunity to have you on again. Episode 568. Welcome.
Hey, I want to acknowledge you and Luke and getting this, Chiro Hustle, 568 episodes. I mean, that's something to be really proud of. And in chiropractic, supporting chiropractic. How many years did you say? This is 6 years?
6.5 years we've been producing content for chiropractors.
Almost 7 years. I mean, it's amazing. And I thank you and all the patients and people that have been served through this podcast. I've had people say that they watch this podcast. So, thank you for all the hard work that you've done. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I know that that's one of the anchors of our conversation today, not only Anchor Release, which is a self-care program that we'll get to a little bit later in today's conversation, but podcasting. You're doing 3 of them. What's the big idea behind each avenue that you're doing podcasting for, and how can people participate on those with you?
Well, there is Synapse Philosophy podcast, and that's chiropractic philosophy. And we read from green books. We've got a team of chiropractors with hundreds of years of chiropractic experience. And, it's amazing. We break down, the green books line by line, some of them. And, in Dee Dee's 1914 book, The Chiropractor, there are spots in there that, we've spent whole podcasts discussing one line because it was so important from Dee Dee Palmer. We've taken a little bit of a break while my son was having, football practice. And now I'm getting back to it. We're starting again. Tomorrow, we're going to actually record our next one. And that's chiropractic philosophy for everyone. It's not just for chiropractors, and it's important for everyone to realize the power of what we do and why. It's the why, really. And then I have my other one, which is Innate Express podcast. And those are morning meditations and abundance philosophy. It's basically the recording of our morning meetings that we have with our team in the office. And we invite our people to come, or patients, whoever's allowed to, is to join us. And so, some of those are meditations, some of them are healing. We pray for healing for the world. And then some very often we're talking about abundance philosophy. And now, we have one of my podcasts was interviews, and we're switching that one up really. And we're going to start talking about what do people do? What do you do to be well? And, with the basis and understanding of chiropractic, you really do chiropractic first, no matter what, having a clear neural system, the spinal neural system, so it can communicate properly to all of our systems. And then the things that we put in, good healthy foods or detoxing, all those things actually have much more, a greater effect and better efficiency. So that's the one we're launching very, very soon. I'm sort of melding it into the other one, but it's really going to be a new podcast, and we're going to have guest speakers, leaders in the natural health world of really what they're doing. And I get questioned a lot by families who, suspect their child was vaccine wounded. And what do I do? Oh my God, what do I do? And, the child's had shots in each leg, probably 3 or 4 in each one, shoulders, and then a drink and an aerosol up the nose. And they come into me, the child's screaming and beet red. They can't calm it down. They want to give fever reducers, which is not a good idea. It's the last line of defense that baby has. What I tell them, first thing we do is get them some activated charcoal. It has almost no flavor. Make sure you don't get a Chinese source. They use heavy metals in their fertilizers, and start pulling the heavy metals out of the body. It's the first thing that I would do, and I tell people to do. And but there's so many great practitioners out there that are helping families be well, live well, and help detoxify some of this toxic world.
So podcasting, back to the anchor.
Yeah.
What has it helped you do since you've been doing podcasts, and what have you found that's come from you not only being interested in the green books and getting people to build a community around that, but also being interested in other natural healers and building a community around that? Like, what have been some of your main takeaways from being a podcast host?
Well, I get a chance to learn. And instead of having a conversation, you and I, which is also very, very valuable, well, let's share it with the world, because everybody needs something. They need maybe that little bit of information. A mom is looking for an answer, or a dad, an uncle, or grandma, whoever. And that information can be out there, and it's hopefully easily resourced. So it's really to help save and change lives. The philosophy one, which is extremely important for me and dear to my heart, because I learn a little bit more of what our founding fathers really intended for us. And, not being a therapy, but really creating abundance in the body, a clarity from above down and the inside out. That's the way I look at it. And that clarity is life. That's God. That's the spark of life. That is innate intelligence, our spirit. So if any way we can honor that spirit within, allow it to communicate and express at its fullest, I'm doing my job. Now adding, having the other experts of maybe nutrition or detoxing or whatever it might be, or naturopathy, then let's see what they're doing, because that's the outside world in a way. And we have to bring these bodies up to what would we call that? The ability to adapt in our world that we live in, because it's becoming more and more toxic. Or what I'd like to say is, it's actually, we're realizing how toxic these big giant companies have been towards us for generations now, not just recently, but for generations. And if I could talk about one of our guests, this is Zen Honeycutt's book. Can we see it right there?
Sure.
And
Yep.
Moms Across America. And that's her momsacrossamerica.com. But transforming sickness and struggle into triumph, empowerment, and celebration of community. She is absolutely unstoppable, this lady. I'm so impressed. I'm such a fan of hers. And what she's just done is independent research on fast food. They found glyphosates in absolutely everything, which is a poison. And then, and I won't even advertise the company that makes it, but they're the biggest chemical companies in the world. And then they just found animal contraceptives, not condoms, right? Contraceptive drugs that decrease infertility in animals, right? They have found it in Chick-fil-A. I don't even want to advertise these companies, quite honestly, but you have to say it, because I don't want my children, they don't eat that food anyway. But, they get pressured out with their friends or out with a family that goes and stops there for a quick lunch. We have to know what's going into our bodies. And even locally where I am, we had a local farmer that I got cows. We can go meet the cow. I knew that cow from the moment it was born no longer can sustain their business because they couldn't find anybody to work. And so I'm no longer able to get meat from them that I know is pure. But now I've found some more in my own town. We've got to be investigative for ourselves and for our families. So Families First, this is our event where we have our speakers. I've invited the farmers. I give them free booths at our expo because I want to find chickens that are not mRNA vaccinated, right? But that's why they killed millions of chickens and millions of cows, so they can juice them up and stick them on your plate where you might have said no to a shot, but you're going to get them in sneaky ways. And we've got to be vigilant. We've got to take care of I always say this, as a chiropractor, I have taken a commitment to stand up for the health of my community. I have, and I say it proudly and loudly to my people. And whether they're my patients or not, this is still my community, and I stand up for it.
And all those things I really appreciate. And most people don't know that they're getting to the point where their food is going to be, I guess, adulterated. And like, there's a lot of things that are going on that most people don't understand how it could happen or why it's happening. And why can't we just go to the grocery store and buy food that is healthy and nutritious for us and our families? That's family health freedom to me. Like,
that's right.
And I've seen these things going across Facebook, and people are talking about, like, they're starting to like put mealworms and crickets and different ingredients and different types of foods. And there's other ones where they're posting like GMO ingredients that are like in all these different like popular brands. But for a long time, I always told people we're feeding ourselves sick. And now it's like they're figuring out new ways to do that. And one of the reasons that chiropractic works, I believe, is because it helps relieve inflammation in the dural sheath of the spine. But when we're bombarded now with all these neurotoxins and possible mRNA in our food sources, which is protein that we're eating, like, what is that going to do to the neurons in our body? And how is that going to cause more inflammation and make more people hypertonic and, toxic? And I think that that's a part about chiropractic we really don't talk about too much, is the toxicity of the current state of affairs that people are in. It's the water they drink, it's the air they breathe, it's the food that they're feeding themselves. And not to be too much of a upset about things, but to even go buy low quality calorie food and to feed your family in this day and age, and to actually put like a something that you'd be proud of on the table, like, it's $200 a bag of groceries.
Oh, yeah.
And then you don't even know if the food's adulterated with some type of neurotoxin or some type of like a vaccine or some type of growth hormone or some type of a contraceptive. Like, we don't know anymore.
Or a coating on your apples. I mean, come on. My apples are amazing. I don't need BG. I'm not even saying his name anymore. I don't need that cat spraying his garbage on my apples, right? Or on our avocados. Keep that junk away from my food. But this is what I teach my children. I teach my children, when we go to these big grocery stores, this is fast food still, okay? And we have to be vigilant. We have to look for all the labels. We've got to be able to read it. The big grocery stores are still fast food, okay? They get it to our table, sent from millions of miles away or whatever. I'm exaggerating, but, ultimately, it still is fast food. We've got to be vigilant. And now we have a few brands. We go to the big stores. We kind of know what we should get. But now, some of the smaller independent organic companies have been bought out by the gigantic conglomerates. And so finding out who they are, because I don't trust them. I really don't. And we have to be that way, or we just get what we get. And, the thing is, we're talking about eating crickets and all these crazy things. There are a lot of arguments out there. People have been doing it for thousands of years. I would rather be told I'm eating a chocolate covered cricket, and do it for a gag or whatever it is, than it be snuck in under E, whatever the number is. And then you don't know, what are they feeding those things? BG just released all these things in Florida, these mutant mosquitoes. The same philosophy as Jurassic Park, you realize, no male production, and to kill the mosquitoes because of this, I forgot, the Zika or whatever virus that very few people got, and to wipe out the mosquitoes in the Everglades, messing with an environment at the lowest part of the food chain. What does that do to our environment? I'm a chiropractor. I'm not an environmentalist, but does it make sense to anybody else? This affects an entire ecosystem? Of course, right?
You made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is sponsored by Align Life, Brain-Based Health Solutions, Chiro HD, Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, German College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, Life Chiropractic College West, Pro Hockey Chiros, Pro Baseball Chiros, the IFCO, and 100% Chiropractic. Let's hustle. I was watching, I know we're on some rants today, but I was watching some episode with, speaking of the Everglades, with, they call him like the python hunter or something.
I love those guys.
but they don't let those guys in to harvest those snakes out of the darn Everglades. Like they don't let people go in. It was a Joe Rogan show, but they don't even let people go into the Everglades and like extract these like invasive species, but they'll let this guy release these mosquitoes that are gonna like reverse ecosystem us. I don't know.
It's bizarre.
It is bizarre.
I live about 3 or 4 hours north of the Everglades, and we have a very sensitive ecosystem where I am. And they just showed in the news today, a 20-foot boa constrictor in my area up here that literally someone probably just dumped out, and they're thriving because they have no natural predators. And that's the thing with these billionaires. There's no natural predators for these cats. And, ultimately, we have to be able to stand up and be able to voice our opinions and take it into account, because our legislators are not our leaders, right? They're our representatives. So we have to have a big voice. And that's why I'm doing this. Families First Revolution, save the babies, because it's for our babies, right? And I've invited every legislator. I've invited all the school boards. We're starting a PAC, a political action committee, and we're getting strong. We're strong arm these people. You are not going to get my vote or all these hundreds of people's votes unless you do, and we see what your voting looks like. Okay, because let's talk about this for chiropractors. Natural health as a whole is under attack, and let's not take that lightly. As chiropractors, we think we're sort of separated from that. We hopefully are, a voice for it, but ultimately, natural health is completely under attack. FDA wants control of our supplements and all those other things. It's coming, and we've got to stand up strong right now. Tomorrow never comes. My mentor Pasquale Sarasolo used to say, "Do it now, because tomorrow never comes," and that's what we're doing.
Amen.
Amen.
You bring up a lot of important stuff that most people aren't talking about. And when I talk to a chiropractor in confidence, I say, hey, you know what? You guys are like on the chessboard and we're at checkmate, and you guys are the last piece that is like stopping the game from being like over. And I believe that's a big reason why I stepped in over the past 3 years specifically. And I say that we're about freedom of speech, medical freedom, family health freedom, protecting the sacred trust, all these things that anchor us back to your anchor release technique that we'll talk about next. But all these things that anchor us to why chiropractic is so powerful. And it is check, detect, correct vertebral subluxation. And it is about innate intelligence, like your podcast is called. It has innate in there. And it is about universal intelligence. And it is about when somebody's clear and their nervous system is clear. And when a chiropractic adjustment goes in and corrects that vertebral subluxation, what it does to a person. Most people don't have the capacity to think on that level because it takes a long time to understand what innate intelligence is. It takes a long time to understand how the power of an adjustment connects us to our spirituality. It takes a long time for people to understand that chiropractic isn't a part of the medical profession. It takes a long time for people to think that chiropractors aren't quacks. That's why when you opened up today saying, hey, thanks for doing what you've been doing for 6 years, people listen to what you're doing. That's why I continuously press on, because there has to be somebody that like breaks through the confusion and the static and noise out there, that brings on guests like you that are willing to say, look, trust God, do your research.
Yeah. Jim, I'm so happy you said that. And, and it's not chiropractors only. And it's, there are leaders and people willing to step out there. And a lot of people, they want you to do it for them. And I don't mind that. Let's do it. I'm ready to do it because I've got small children. My kids are 7 and 9. If anything, I'm selfish. I'm doing it for them. And then also my grandchildren to come, because I want to see them living in a vitalistic world. And let's put it in that sense. And I'm going to go back up just a little bit about, when we talk about innate intelligence, that's the intelligence, the spirit within the body. And in chiropractic in the beginning by D.D. Palmer and B.J., those guys taught about the importance of honoring the spirit within. And that's a lot of the part of that's been pushed out of even our education in chiropractic, because it's a little esoteric and people are a little bit afraid of that. I adjust people so God can express itself the best it can through this material body. That's what chiropractic is meant to do. Okay. And I'm not afraid to say that. And I'm absolutely certain most of the people out on this planet believe in a higher power. There are smaller percentages that don't, and that's okay. I love them just as much. Chiropractic is that one thing first and only, is allowing the greatest expression of the God in our bodies that animates this material system to express at its best. That's why we do it. The outside stuff we're talking about, the glyphosates and vaccines and all those things, that's the outside world stuff made by man, the chemical stresses that come into this body. That's the stuff that really, we've got to be vigilant about. We've got to educate ourselves so we can educate others about, to watch out for our families and for them. And then when their bodies have gotten toxic overloads, because it's chemical, emotional, and physical stresses, and I also say spiritual stresses, that chemical stress stresses the organ. And we see that through the afferent and efferent, up and down from the brain to the organ and the organ back to the brain. That communication can be hindered because that system is under a lot of duress from that chemical toxicity. And now we see it's so much more, Jim, than we're seeing in practices. And we're seeing people get ill, bone lesions and cancers and all heart issues, my gosh, in younger and younger people. So we've got to stand up for people. That's what leadership is really taking a stand for the people that maybe aren't able to or willing to, and doing it for them anyway.
Well, one of the things that I know we wanted to talk about today is your anchor release technique that you're teaching people for self-care. I know that there's a big hinge that swings, a small hinge that swings big doors with this. So maybe talk about the hinge of the anchor release and how it can swing big doors for people.
Well, what it does, we work, I have worked a lot with creating innate adjusting and innate baby. That's what I teach in chiropractic. And, I brought something. I thought, we've got to be able to give people something for self-care, for home care. If there is some sort of catastrophe, what do you do? And so I derived an approach called anchor release. And INNATE Baby actually is also a little bit a part of that, because it originally stemmed from off-Earth adjusting. I'm in the Space Coast here. We have people traveling through space. Billionaires are shooting rockets up left and right. And, what do we do for these people if we're on long-term travel to Mars or whatever it might be? We can teach them a system of self-care where we're not adding anything to the payload. And I can teach a multitask to an engineer, a botanist, a physicist, or whomever to be able to care for each other on that flight crew. And then I realized I started working with pregnant moms with it, and it had such an amazing effect of just releasing the pelvis, bringing the system into ease. You still need to go to a chiropractor, absolutely, to have subluxations adjusted. This isn't subluxation care, but it's relief care, relief for the pelvis. We see it through the whole system. When the pelvis is at ease, the whole meningiodural system can be more at ease. And actually, adjustments go much more easily and more clearly with the least amount of force to make change in the duromeningeal system, which is this brain and spinal cord, to be specific.
Well, I keep learning more and more all the time. And that's a cool thing about being a host of a show that has interviewed so many people over, over half a decade. And I've
568, Jim. I'm proud to say that number out loud for you, man. That is awesome.
Well, I've also been able to be in rooms full of amazing minds. And anybody that's watched my journey knows that I'm always surrounding myself with world leaders, thought leaders, people that are out there doing the work. And I've been able to talk to some people. And just a small takeaway, I was talking to a doc that's been a chiropractor, I think between 30 and 40 years. I don't remember the exact time, but he's an older dude. And he said the more fibrotic somebody's musculature system is, the more that you hear like the release of somebody's segments. He's like, so when you adjust somebody and their body is like actually at ease and it's not fibrotic, you don't hear so much of the release of that segment. He goes, over time, when their bodies start to get more stress and toxic, the adjustment becomes louder. And I'm like, holy wow. I never thought of it that way. But he said, when the joint is healthy, it doesn't have the same cavitation release as when a joint is full of stress and inflammation.
If I can add a little bit to that, innate adjusting is the way we adjust is actually bring the most amount of ease to the dura and the duromeningeal system, so there's less torque. And in a way, we're counteracting that inner stress on that meningeal system, and with the least amount of force to make the change. And people that have been to many chiropractors often say, "Well, where's all that drama?" I'm like, "This is a drama-free office, baby. This is drama-free, and the least amount of force to make the greatest change."
Well, I think that there's a lot that goes into these conversations, and I hope that people that are watching today get some takeaways and some understanding of what they can do to be proactive for themselves with not only chiropractic, but what they're feeding themselves, what they're paying attention to, how they're taking care of themselves, the community that they're building. And I know that this event that you're bringing out, you're bringing a bunch of awesome speakers, and there's a big why around it. So let's talk about that in closing.
Well, I want to talk about Dr. Brian Hooker. He wrote this book with Robert Kennedy Jr., Vaxxed or Unvaxxed. I mean, he's throwing out there. The title of his talk is "Are Unvaccinated Children Healthier Than Vaccinated?" And, I put that out on there all in our social media. We've got a lot of trolls hit us back, but, they're the uneducated. And unfortunately, we're here to educate families, and you make your own decision. It's not up to me what you decide. And, he has become, I was just on his podcast, and this book is amazing, and it's easy to reference for families with questions. And we have Sal Martingano, who is a chiropractor, and we were on the board together, Florida Chiropractic Society. And his is COVID fraud, World Health Organizations, government cover-ups, 2,000 mules, and the January 6th insurrection in deep state. That's what his talk is about. I love it. We're throwing it out there. We're not holding back in any of this stuff. And we're laying it on the line. We're recording it, and I just found she's actually my cousin, and I'm so blessed to have her. And she's flying in to sign translate for our deaf community all this information, because they need it. Everybody needs it. It's easier to put Spanish and Portuguese subtitles, which we will do. It's not easy to do it in sign, so we're going to have somebody do live sign translation at the event as well.
Well, Dr. Haig, I'm really thankful to have you on today. It's been really good for us to talk about what people need to hear. And I think a lot of times we have like these feelings and these emotions inside of us, and we don't release them. And as you said, what was the famous quote from Pasquale Sarasoli?
Tomorrow never comes. There's lots of them.
Yeah, tomorrow never comes, but you have to do it. Like,
you have to do it now. Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
You have to do it now. Tomorrow never comes.
That's
and
right.
That's one of these big eye openers about having a media source like this. I can't tell you how many times I've been censored or shadow banned, or 2% of my news feed sees what I have. Maybe 1% of my news feed sees what we do, but I still move forward.
Yeah.
They killed the traffic to my website, but I still move forward. They don't want us to be able to disseminate information about chiropractic. Why? Because it helps people. You know, my first creed when I first got into chiropractic, the doctor I worked with, he said, the reason we're doing this is to help more people.
Yeah.
And it almost makes me damn cry, because the reason I do this is to help more people.
And saving lives. You're saving lives. Absolutely.
And I don't really get emotional on this show. It's a rarity that I do. But I believe that people need what you're doing. They need chiropractic. They need to know how to keep their families healthy. They need to know how to be accountable. They need to know where to go and who to trust. You know, I go do screenings all across the country. And one of my anchor statements to people is, I know why you're here today, because you don't know where to go or who to trust. And you know what? We can help you. And I say that in full honesty and full transparency, because I know that what a chiropractor does in their four walls is exactly what I tell somebody that they'll do. They'll do an exam, a consultation, a health history. They'll find out what's going on. They'll shoot x-rays if needed. And then they'll tell them what, the problem is, how much concern there is. And then they'll put it out, what it looks like to get under care. And that's what all the people really want. They don't want somebody in a white coat that stays away from them, that throws a pill, a potion, or a lotion at them. They want somebody that's actually going to get to know them, find out what's going on, tell them how they can help them. And that's why I love chiropractic. And that's why I've done what I've done for so long, is because I do believe that everybody deserves a chance to at least be checked by a chiropractor. And if they can go in and have that first encounter, it might be the one thing that changes the generational health of not only, like you said, your kids, but their kids. Yeah. And that's what chiropractic means to me, and why I do what I do, because I did at one point 15 years ago, when I first started working in chiropractic, I knew that there would be a time when chiropractic would become the most important thing on planet Earth. And I still think that we're going in a really positive direction. And regardless if they're banning me or censoring me, I won't allow it to continue in a way that we won't just carry on. So, Jim, Dr. Haig, appreciate you.
Can I want to read something from Pasquale Sarasoli, if you don't mind. And I also want to give my websites, savethebabies.baby. And that's for the event, our room block. We have $180 and it's $186 oceanfront for the room. And, it's only $45 for the event. Just get here. And my other page is getchiro.net. And, if you send me a message or connect on there, we just did independent research on fevers and, how important fevers are for children and what to look out for. But if you don't mind, if we wrap it up, I'm going to read this from Pasquale.
Please
and
do.
It says, spiritually, all suffering and sickness is non-existent. It's only because of this current state of negativity and the lack of faith in our own power and existence that we have all this sickness, disease, and suffering. For the spiritually inclined, you lose nothing and gain everything. When there is a spiritual shift in the consciousness of our world, we're in that right this minute, you will see people have a shift towards chiropractic and what we're truly all about. Pasquale J. Sarasoli, chiropractor. So I'll send you that if you send me a message, and to the chiropractors and for the general public, because there's going to be a lot of public listening to this as well.
Well, I really appreciate you being on with us today. I think it was a timely conversation that we had today. And we'll look back on this many years down the line and be thankful that we're documenting the truth of chiropractic.
Amen.
Dr. Haig, thanks for sharing your resources. SaveTheBabies.baby, GetChiro.net. And when is the event?
November 18th and 19th is our expo. So it's 18th and 19th. The speakers are November 18th.
Great. So it's oceanfront property. The ticket's more affordable than an Uber ride across your town. And you can go there and meet people, learn about your freedom for your family, and maybe something about chiropractic too. I'm going to close out by telling everybody this is episode 568, and you're just one story away. Keep hustling. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye for now, Dr. Haig.
God bless you.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.